There seems to be a huge lack of integrity in the world, especially with leaders. And I'm so curious as to why this is.
Okay. Based on one study, in the last 6,500 years, there have been 14,000 wars.
Wars.
Which means 5 wars every 2 years. And this remained basically consistent. When you look at history, lack of integrity has been always present. So human beings, the level of integrity of human beings, I do not think declined. Most human beings have always been out of integrity.
It's just that we're hearing about it more, maybe.
Because we see it more.
Media.
Yes. And in order for somebody to be in integrity, he or she needs to know who he or she is. Because integrity is to be true to oneself. And if you don't know who you are, and your principles, and your visions, missions, and purposes, you don't have any standard with which to be in integrity. So lack of integrity comes from lack of knowledge, self-knowledge. And since the time of Socrates and Buddha, self-knowledge always has been in short supply. So in the most fundamental sense, humanity is out of integrity and inauthentic because humanity as a whole does not know the self, the true self. And integrity has other dimensions, like being true to one's principles. And this again, you need to have a clear principles to begin with, and you need to have the willpower to stick with your principles. And willpower is also in short supply. So as a whole, humanity has not evolved or devolved with respect to the level of integrity. But because there are more people and more information available, we see more of it. That's number one. And number two, there is a different dimension to this. Integrity can be also defined as a balance, a wholeness of a system. Our body has its own integrity, balance. When the balance is broken, if your body is in integrity, it tries to balance back. Yes? Based on the Eastern medical tradition, most diseases are the manifestation of imbalance. So if body is healthy, when body is in integrity, through some form of a disease, illness, if you let your illness go through its own process, body will restore its own balance. So that all systems that exist in this universe has its own balance and integrity. And today, systems that humans have built are on the verge of breakdown, or actually already breaking down and collapsing. And when you look at in a long range historical term, it is actually a good news. the system that has been built, political system, economical system, that the humans have built, came to a point that it is no longer sustainable. So, fundamental integrity of the system as such is acting out in such a way that it shows up as a collapse. When you study biology, you learn this phenomenon called hypertrophy. Some organs, when it before it actually, collapses, dies, it hypertrophies. It become too big. Today, for example, when you look at the political system, the government, and government-oriented or government symbiotic economic system, it has to become too big.
Yeah.
So everywhere you see is politics.
Yeah.
And this system of materialism, commercialism, all that, started maybe 200 years ago, have come to a point where it cannot sustain itself. So I can see that this is actually a manifestation of fundamental integrity of the universe manifesting as a form of collapse. Now, one thing I must point out from now, past, and now to the future. So what is going to be the next system? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, we all know in the 16th century, a man named Copernicus wrote a book and dispelled the myth that the sun, the rest of the universe, go around the earth. Mm-hmm. He was not as revolutionary as most people think, because only thing he did was shifting the center from the earth to the sun. The rest remains basically the same. And then there came the man named Giordano Bruno, who said, universe has no center. It is not geocentric. It is not heliocentric. Sun is one of the infinite number of stars in this infinite universe. There is no center. Or every point in the whole universe is a center. It's acentric and omnicentric. That was a truly revolutionary idea. He was burned at the stake year 1600 for his, so-called heretical view. He was way ahead of, his time in many other, philosophy and ontology, cosmology. But anyway, so universe has no center, or every point in the universe is a center. Human social organizations has been always modeled after in the same mode of thinking. So either it is a earth-centered or the sun-centered, but there's a center, concentric. So in human organization, there's a center. Political power, the government, church. We call this external authority with special privilege and power. And this is the most fundamental problem that we have today. Political power is a special legalized privilege to use force or violence against people who have done no harm. Yeah. So you are driving 65 miles per hour and limit is 55 miles per hour, they will stop you and then give you a ticket. Who decided it's 55 miles per hour? If you are focused and driving well, you haven't killed anybody, but they will charge you. And if you refuse it, you'll be sent to jail. It's a very simple example. So this is a political power, and then religious organizations have similar power.
Right.
Well, God said this, you must do this, you follow. So there's a concentric mode of thinking and concentric mode of social organization. And actually what I call ideosphere, sphere of ideas and ideation is concentric, just like the earth-centered or sun-centered model. And today we have a government. We say democracy. No, it is a centralized power there. And political power, those politicians and businesses that are connected to the politics, government, they basically control the whole planet. And we are enslaved by them. This whole structure of concentric organization of ideosphere and social sphere, this whole system has come to the end. That's what is happening today. For human beings, the level of integrity of human beings, I do not think declined. Most human beings have always been out of integrity.
It's just that we're hearing about it more, maybe.
Because we see it more.
Media.
Yes.
There seems to be a huge lack of integrity in the world, especially with leaders. And I'm so curious as to why this is.
Okay. 5 wars every 2 years. And this remained basically consistent. When you look at history, lack of integrity has been always present. So, and in order for somebody to be in integrity, he or she needs to know who he or she is. Because integrity is to be true to oneself. And if you don't know who you are, based on one study, in the last 6,500 years, there have been 14,000 wars.
Wars.
Which means